What's going on, everybody? So this week's episode, we're going to be talking to Rick Lawler from, I'll have to get him to say the name of it, but I think it's Propaganda on YouTube. Who the heck is that? I'm not sure who that was. But anyway, so we're going to get to meet Rick. Actually, Rick used to live in the town I live in now, and now lives 2 hours north of me in Portland. So there's going to be an interesting conversation today. But here's Rick.
Hey guys. Hey Josh, how you doing?
What's going on, man?
Hey, thank you. Thank you for asking me to be on.
Yeah, someone had to cancel this week, so I had to scramble real quick to get
Make me feel good.
Yeah. I really appreciate you coming on and filling in. It really helped me out this week quite a bit.
Yeah, my pleasure.
But the first question, it's propaganda models on you, or is it just propaganda?
I think it's. When I set that thing up, it was a while ago without really thinking about. So you register on YouTube, just as a customer way back when, and that was years ago before I ever had this idea of doing the videos, which I just started this summer. And on my website and kind of on the modeling forums, I've always used the tag as propaganda. That's just kind of my website. That's just what I've been known as. And so I've been trying to merge the two. So on YouTube, I think it's actually, if you search Rick Lawler, it comes up. And I think now if you start to search Rick Lawler propaganda, it also starts to come up, because I've been trying to merge the two over the last, couple of 3 weeks or whatever.
And that's you trying to get your hashtags on there and everything, right?
Yeah. It's just a matter of, going into the backside and changing a few settings, but it takes a while for the algorithms to catch up with what my intentions are. And then there's certain things that are just set in stone and you can't necessarily change them, but it's getting there. So, like on the YouTube site, I think I had to get to 100. I think it was 100 subscribers. And once I did that, then I was able to change the URL, and that's helped a lot. So it's now Rick Lawler propaganda.
Oh, okay. That's cool. It's pretty crazy on how YouTube is kind of set up these days, huh?
Yeah, and I'm learning. I am absolutely learning this game. I wasn't somebody who necessarily had any intention of making videos. It just was something like few other people can do it, or other people can do it. And I was very happy doing the print and the other media stuff that I do for the companies and myself. And it just got to this point where I was going like, I'm really enjoying watching these videos. I think I might have something to say. I'm not sure. We'll see how that goes. But it gave me another little outlet to kind of round out my modeling. I'm going to be building models anyway, so let's film it and let's talk about them, and maybe there'll be some interest in something I can share with people.
No, I mean, it's really cool, and that's kind of what I wanted to jump into right away. Now, what exactly do you do for AK?
Primarily, I'm content, and I guess generally marketing. Content is a big part of that, where I'm always building for magazines, books, things like that. So tons of my work are in all sorts of the different publications, not just Armor or dioramas, but I've done sci-fi. I do a lot of the how-to tutorials that you might see if you go on the websites and things like that, where it'll be step-by-step things. I do a lot of editing. So publications will be ready to come out to be published, say in December. So I'll get copies of the proofs maybe a month or so beforehand, and I'll go through and edit it. Oftentimes, and this happens for all the companies, but oftentimes, especially when there's multiple contributors, there'll be multiple languages involved. And so oftentimes I'll be involved a little bit in the translation, but especially towards the end, I'll be involved in cleaning up whatever the translations were done before that point and make it into proper English. Do a little bit of layout. I don't know, little jack of all trades.
So let me understand this. So basically, you're demonstrating the products. Is that how I understand that?
Uh, in certain instances, so let's just take a
Like the
take
weathering pencils, right? Like the
yeah,
weathering.
what weathering pencils is a perfect one. I did some stuff with that. So the weathering pencils are released. Um, initially, well, let's tell you the story. So the weathering pencils are released. I was sent maybe six pencils to play with, and it was not too long after that that I was told that I was going to be going to Chattanooga for the IPMS Nationals and doing a demonstration on pencils. So I got more pencils and learned real quickly how to use them, and then gave 2 demonstrations in Chattanooga at the IPMS Nationals on how to do pencils. In conjunction with that, as AK started rolling out the pencils and they became more popular, there needed to be tutorials and just information on how to use them, the diversity of the pencils, different ways that they can be used. And so I created some content that went into a booklet. So it's actually a publication booklet that has multiple projects in it, and each one demonstrates pencils being used in different ways. And that's a conjunction with other artists as well. So I've got, I think, 2 projects in that particular book, and out of maybe 10 or 12, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's really cool because I mean, this is technically what you do for a living, also, right?
This is what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that this is going to be the cool thing about this interview is kind of how you got started in this, because it's a unique story, right?
Yeah, it's it's a roundabout way, and I should say the making this my only living is a rather recent development. So that part's new, but I do have a background. I've been modeling forever, and I have a background that is different than modeling. I own my own businesses for 25 years that were totally different than this. And then after I left that, I started working in what would be the commercial production industry. So making models and displays that went into museums, movie sets, you name it. And so I did that for, geez, 10, 12 years. And that included, 3D scanning and all sorts of different things and traditional fabrication methods and things like that. And then once I got done doing that well, basically the pandemic helped make that transition. So the fall of last year, this transitioned into my full-time and only thing that I'm doing.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool how COVID just exploded this hobby. Like it was out there, and then COVID happened, and then it's like, well, everybody needed something to do.
Yeah, yeah. So much for the rumors that the hobby is dying, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm gonna pick up the product starting with the weathering pencils. How do you think, or what do you think of the weathering pencils? Because I haven't really used any of the AK stuff.
So yeah, so initially I had no idea how to use them. So that's why we do these tutorials and things like that. And if you like follow my Facebook page or my Instagram page, you'll see like little snapshots of me using pencils, for instance. And those are part of this whole marketing tutorial thing. Just, look at these scratches I made with these pencils, and you just make a nice little beauty shot. And then that generates a conversation, oftentimes offline, where people will contact me and say, hey, what did you do? Or I've got these and I can't make it do what you just did. What are you doing different? And we'll have these conversations. So that's also part of my purview. But when I first started with them, again, I had to learn how to use them. So, my inclination was just to start drawing on the surface, and that didn't work very well. So I had to learn things such as it needed to be a matte surface in order for the pencils to adhere to it.
No,
Um,
wait. What do you mean matte surface? Like
not a
gloss?
not a gloss varnish surface, but a matte, a dull coat surface.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so you have to have some bite to it for the pencil to go onto. And then I started learning that they're water soluble. And then once I learned that part of it, I was able to open up all sorts of different ways of and methods of applying these. So You could, for instance, dip the tip of the pencil into the water, and then it turns into almost like a pencil paintbrush sort of thing. You could just almost draw and paint on it at the same time. Um, you could take a paintbrush and wick it off the end of the pencil, and then use the paintbrush and use just basically the paint from the brush or from the pencil as that. I learned that you could, you have to sharpen the pencils and you get those shavings. So I'll pull the pencil pulp out of it and just have the lead color, dissolve that in with water, and then just use it like a paint, like an acrylic type paint. It's not really an acrylic, but it's water soluble. I guess it is an acrylic.
It's more like watercolor, right?
Yeah, I guess I couldn't even tell you. I mean, it's got a binder in it. So whatever that binder is to keep it, its shape changes it from, say, what we would think of a pure acrylic. It dries very similar to an acrylic, but it's got a little bit different consistency when it's in its liquid form. But it works just fine. And then I did an M8 Greyhound. It's for an AK publication, and by that time I was really heavily into the pencils because I was working on those tutorials at the same time. And I got to thinking, I wonder if I could take that pulp, that paint, the chips, put it in my airbrush cup, dissolve it, and spray it. And sure enough, I could. So I was able to get mud and splatter effects from that same sort of a material. So, so how do I like them? I like them. I did a wasp that was 100% weathered with the pencils, and it came out beautiful. And that was probably my favorite project using them, because that was the intention, is to take this project from beginning to end and use only pencils for the weathering, no enamels, no oils, anything like that. And it turned out great. Since that point in time, since I was hot and heavy on, learning how to use them and putting all the tutorials together and doing all that stuff, what I've found is that they've just become another tool in my toolbox. So they're sitting there along my oils, my enamels, my acrylics, and everything else. So there are certain instances that they're the ideal thing to use. There's other instances where they could be a substitution for another product. It might just be the handiest thing on the shelf that I'll use that I know I can get the same result from.
No, and the weathering pencils seem to be, well, other than the new paints that just came out, seem to be really popular.
Yeah,
you hear about them all the time on Facebook pages, and
yeah, they're great. They're a fantastic product, and it's a new way to. It's like I said, it's a new tool. I mean, the colored pencils have been around forever, and artist pencils have been around forever, and everybody. That's the secret. Is a lot of the products that our companies put out are just repurposed and finely tuned general art products. But there is something different about them. And I don't know the chemistry behind it. I wasn't part of that conversation, but I had some Prismacolor pencils, for instance, before that point in time. And these act differently than the Prismacolor pencils. They're a little, I feel that they're a little friendlier. They don't have quite as much what I would call kind of a greasy aspect to them. So they've cleaned them out somehow and still left the best of it behind.
No, I mean, yeah, look, I mean, like I was saying, it seems like they've gotten really, really popular.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I want to bring up is the new paints. Have you got to try any of those?
Are you talking about the Gen 3s or the real colors?
I'm going to say the Gen 3s because
the acrylics?
They're the white lid, right?
Yeah. I've had those for a year or better since they were released. I've got a pretty comprehensive set of those, and I love them. They are absolutely brilliant paints. Both for airbrushing and traditional brushing.
So the question that I always hear is, how the heck do you thin those? Because it seems like they only thin with the MK products.
So if I'm just paintbrushing, say doing figures or painting them on my models with the paintbrush, I just use water. They thin out just perfectly. If I'm going to airbrush them, then there is a AK Gen 3 thinner, and that works best. And I kind of learned that the hard way. I'll tell you the funny story. So I got my samples from Spain, and I was working on a project at that time too. What was I working on? Oh, the Mad Max Burn Baby Burn, the truck that was. Anyway, I thought perfect perfect project that I'm going to, use these new paints on. And so I load them up and I start painting them, trying to paint an acrylic blue color over the body of this truck as I normally would. And my airbrush was gumming up and I was spitting and I was not getting good coverage. And
Yeah.
I thinned it with water. And so I tried some other colors and I didn't get any better results, and kind of just like, wow, this is not working for me. That's kind of where my first step is. This is not working for me. I need to figure this out. But so I contacted Fernando being the head of AK Interactive back in Spain. And I said, hey, Fernando, I've got these paints and I've been playing with them here, trying to work on this, and they're not working for me. And he's going like, well, I don't quite understand, because, we did a bunch of product testing and our other authors and artists are using them and they're having really good results. And I'm going, are they airbrushing them? And he goes, yeah, of course. And they're getting fantastic results. And I'm going, I don't get it, because it's not working for me. And I've switched out airbrushes. I've done all sorts of, troubleshooting along the way, and I can't get them to work. And he asked the question finally, what are you thinning them with? And I said, I'm thinning them. I've tried alcohol and I tried water, and neither of them are working. He says, well, do you have our thinner? I said, I didn't know there was a thinner. Again, they were just being released. And he says, let me send you a bottle of thinner. And so he did. And then they started working fine.
Yeah,
So
because it seems like that's the trick with that. They only work good with that thinner, and I was just curious if you found something different.
No,
At least
that's the one
what
that,
I've been hearing.
yeah, that's worked for me. That's third time charm. I tried two other things. That one works. I don't need to look for anything else. It's like, if it works, it works. I usually stop there. I'm not one of those guys that keeps experimenting, trying to find something just incrementally better. I'm not that fussy.
So, so what other products have you used out of AK that you like? And it could be just generic products, right?
Yeah. Well, in terms of paints, the real colors, so those are the lacquers, the little jars. I'd have to get up to go get them for you, but those are the best. So in terms of comparable, if you want to have measurements against other companies and things like that, in my mind, Vallejo has the best brush paints that were out there, the little bottles. The AK Gen 3s are equal to those, if not a little bit better. So equivalency, that's how those par up. I've always been a fan of Tamiya paints thinned with lacquer thinner for spraying base coats and things. And when the real colors came out, they are equal or superior to the Tamiya paints. They're absolutely fantastic. And they dry. There's two sets. There's two series within the real color range. There's what would be the, I guess, more armor colors, and they are armor titles and stuff, but there's other colors within the range. Those dry dead flat, and they're beautiful. And then there's the aircraft side of it, and those have just a slight gloss to them. But both of them work perfectly, and they're interchangeable. So those, in terms of paints, those are my go-tos right now. We talked about the pencils. I have a lot of those that I love. I know it's nothing really terribly special, but I make a lot of dioramas. So I love all the different carving foams that they offer. And so I've always got a stack of those sitting around.
What's carved? Is that you're talking about the thing underneath everything? Foam,
No,
right?
no. I mean, if you want to give me half a second off camera, I'll go get a couple of props.
Go ahead. You're good. Because, yeah. Hey, Mopar, here. While he's doing that, here you go, Mopar. I actually have got. Oh, come on. Of course, it doesn't want to do it. There you go, Mopar. I got the eyes done on that pig. I still have to detail them out, but I still have that. I got to gloss coat those things now.
Okay. Didn't know it was going to be such a show and tell today.
Well, it happens. No worries.
Okay, so let's go back one step here. So, whoops. These being the Gen 3s.
Yeah.
So these are the acrylics that I like a lot. The real colors, they come in sets. This one happens to be Russian Modern AFV. And, the bottles look pretty familiar, like to Maya bottles. But these are fantastic. I love these. They can be thinned with the yellow cap Tamaya thinners, the lacquer thinner, or there's a real color thinner that goes with them. So I would suggest using one of the. You have to use one of those too. Don't use water; they'll gum up your airbrush like crazy. So the foams are just these carving foams, just different density carving foams. Where's my camera?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. So nothing terribly special about this. It's just you can get them in different densities from them, different thicknesses, and
that's an AK product?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So I like I said, I have a whole stack of this stuff in my closet, and when I need to do a new diorama or something like that, I just go grab some, start cutting it up and do that. Other products that I think are standouts are, again, I do a lot of dioramas. So all these textures that they do for different diorama stuff. So this is earth, that was concrete. There's dry mud, there's wet mud, there's water effects. There's all sorts of different things. They're all acrylic based for the most part. Most of them are, and easy to work with, dry relatively quickly, and most of them are pre-colored to something that's either you could just use it straight out of the bottle or take paint really well and finish really nicely, and it's super nice and hard and durable. So those are pretty nice. I use those a lot. And then I've been a fan of using pigments forever, and AK does a great job. These happen to be 502 Aptalung, which is part of the AK line. Oh, speaking of which, oil paints too. 502 Aptalung is one of the subcategories within the AK interactive umbrella. These happen to be the 502 pigments. AK also has their own line of pigments. They're basically the same. And what's nice about these, I've worked in the hobby side of the industry since 2008, 9, beginning with MIG Productions. And at that point, MIG was just starting to put out, the pigments and the filters and the washes and things like that. So it was brand new at that point. And I remember distinctly using the pigments, which I really liked and, still use now. But I distinctly remember that the grind, the texture of the pigments was inconsistent, and there would be, say, chunks of, colors that shouldn't be in there, like little globs of whites or something like that in there. Fast forward, 10, 12, 15 years, and these are just beautifully sifted. They're perfect colors. So I like those. They're nice and consistent. And then the last thing I was going to say was the 502 Aptalung oil paints. Those are my go-tos. Those are on every project that I do. And, I think you hear a lot of other people talking about using those as well.
Yeah, I think I have heard those in the diorama Facebook groups I'm in. It seems like AK seems to have become the diorama, products to go to.
Yeah, they've got a lot of really extensive line. And, one of the nice things about working with a company like AK is, like I said, I'm in constant contact with Spain. I talk to them 2-3 times a week. And a lot of times it's just about nothing, just how are things going or what projects you're working on or giving them updates. And, they'll tell me what's coming down the pipe or whatever it might be. But at the same time, I could be working on a project and need a particular type of material or have an idea for a particular type of material or tool or whatever it might be. And they listen. And I know they do that with other modelers within their stable as well. And so by the time you start working with, however many modelers around the world that they work with and listen to all this feedback and input and all these ideas, they do a really good job of turning those around into usable products that fit that bill. And so it's really nice to be supported by somebody like that.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like even their customer service has gotten way better. At least
Yeah.
that's kind of the impressions I get offline, right?
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, I know they work hard at it. I know that the pandemic hit them really. They had some really rough times early last year. They were basically shut down, and so warehousing and shipping and things like that really took a beating. But they seem to be back in the swing of things now pretty well, because I can get product to myself within 7 days. So I'm sure most everybody else can too.
No, yeah. I mean, and I think now they have a couple distributors in the US now for some of this stuff.
Yeah, there's a few of them. So I have a little bit of a familiarity with the distribution side of things here. So there are a few AK distributors in the United States. A lot of them happen to be secondary distributors. Lightspeed out of Canada is probably their main landing spot, and then Lightspeed will secondarily distribute to a lot of the online hobby shops and stores and things like that.
And then I know Brett Marcourt out of Colorado. I think he's got the Gen 3 lineup that he can get. And I don't know what else he has, but I know at least he's looked into that set.
Yeah, well, even Tammy's Hobbies up here, I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're over in Beaverton.
Yeah.
I went and bought some things from them about a month and a half ago, and I walked in the store and they'd flipped everything to AK. So they had Gen 3, they had real colors, they have those terrain effects, they have the entire range of stuff, and they said they couldn't be happier.
Yeah, and I mean, as soon as we're done with the AK thing, we're going to talk about how the hobby is in our state, because I'm kind of curious to see what that is. But so you're doing this professionally. What's kind of your camera setup and stuff? Are you just using a simple cell phone? I mean,
No. So when so we'll backtrack to say July, when I'm deciding to. Well, let's do two things. So for years now, I've been doing the magazine stuff. So I have so I dialed that in. I'll tell you kind of a funny story there about cameras. So this is back in 2006, 5, someplace in there, maybe even around in there. And I'm starting to get back into the hobby. I'd done it all my life and started to get more and more serious about it. And so I'd been building models for a little while. And then the modeling forums are starting to go on, and it's like missing links and things like that. And so I started posting a few things here and there. And I think it was on the MIG Productions forum at that point in time. There was a Hetzer build, I think it was. And I was posting progress shots and final shots and everything as it went through the progress. And one of the people on that forum happened to be Mike Rinaldi. And he contacts me and he says, Rick, it looks like you're doing a really good job with your builds. I really like what you're doing. He says, but your photography sucks. You need to get it. You need a better camera. And so
that stuff sounds like Mike too.
Yeah. And so it's just like, yeah, you're right. I had some, I don't even know what it was at that point, but that made me start thinking of, as a modeler, professional modeler, for lack of a better word, but as somebody who wants to present your work, you need to be able to present it in the best possible light. Otherwise, you could be doing great work, and if no one wants to look at it because it looks like crap, then it's going to look like crap, and that's all I see of it. So ended up buying my first good camera on his recommendation. At Christmas, I got a Nikon D40. And then then I built a light box, and then I started taking pictures and learning how to take pictures. And excuse me. And then that led to, Photoshop and learning how to use Photoshop. And, you know, everything kind of grew from there. And then by the time that I was in a position to where my skills started to match my photography, then all of a sudden I was able to get into the magazines just as a contributor. But I had now those foundational things that I could take good photographs. I could get the white backgrounds color corrected correctly. I know how to compose them. My modeling skills were at a level that the editors would say, yeah, we'll take your article. I've always more or less been able to write, so I could do that part of it, although there's funny stories behind that as well. And, so those are the foundations. So that was a D40 on a homemade light box. And I used that for years and years and years. And then ended up tipping my tripod over one time about 4 years ago. I mean, I needed a new camera. So that's the Nikon D5600 that replaced it. And that's sitting right there. And that's what I still take all my magazine photographs with. And then as I decided I was going to give this video thing a go earlier this summer, I started doing a lot of research on what do rigs look like to do kind of what we do. There's a lot of information out there about, I don't know, what are they called? Influencers, the person that sits in front of the camera with a headshot and you're like, you can get 1,000 subscribers in one day and here's how you do it. Or, buy this product, and they're doing the head-on shots and all this kind of stuff. And I needed something that it could be hands-off. And I knew that I wanted those same things that I'd learned through photography, which was, good lighting, good backgrounds, all the rest of that stuff. So I wanted to keep the aesthetics looking nice. I wanted to be as simple as possible, hands-free as possible, not cluttered, things like that. So I started digging deeper and I ended up building this rig here, ordering some stuff, got some LED lights here that will blow you out. So 2 of those, they're all color corrected. And I use the D5600 on the video mode, and it's got a flip screen so I can watch myself if I want to. And then that's my video rig. It's all suspended up above, so I'm hands-free, no clutter. And then on the desk over there, I'll generally usually my microphone and stuff is sitting over there, and that's where I'll do my video editing and voiceovers.
Oh, okay. No, that's cool. I mean, that sounds like a pretty simple setup, right? For the most part.
Yeah. And, for someone who wasn't quite sure what I was doing or how to do it, or even if I wanted to do like the video side of things, other than the camera, which I already had, I had to purchase everything else. But, pretty budget friendly. I think the whole thing was it was less than $1,000, probably closer to $800. That includes the stands, the C clamps, the lights, all sorts of stuff, even the microphone.
Yeah, and it's crazy what some of that, webcams and microphones and stuff, how cheap and like right now how expensive they are.
Yeah, you can go both sides of that coin, that's for sure.
Well, like the camera I'm using right now to do this I'm using the 9C20s, right? So before COVID, they were giving these things away. If you bought like a Snowball mic or a Yeti mic, they gave you the webcam for free, basically.
Yeah.
And now the camera is like backed up to like 120, $200, some of them. And, it's crazy towns,
Yeah.
But everybody had to have them all of a sudden,
Yeah. Well, a lot of people doing what we're doing.
So I didn't really have any other questions about the AK products. I actually want to, you lived in the town I'm in now. How was the hobby back then? That's what I want to know.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about this. I lived probably about 5-6 miles from where you're sitting right now. I lived on the west side of town. We lived outside of town, and we lived on side of a hill on 50 acres in the middle of it, surrounded by trees. So I basically grew up more or less by myself. In terms of the hobby, there was, what was it? if you wanted to buy a model, you had to go to Eugene, and that meant going to Eugene Toy and Hobby, which is still there, I think. And
Yep.
then from time to time, there would be either like a five and dime, like there was an 88-cent store and a couple other like type stores that would come in on Main Street there that might have a plastic kit or two from time to time, but those kind of came and went. You're never sure. I started building models. My first model I was given to me when I think it was my 6th birthday, and it was given to me by my grandpa, and it was a little Indy car, and that's I still remember that, and it was, I built it over the next few days, with a tube of glue, and probably looked like crap, and I think I bought a silver, and I bought like a baby blue, like the little jars of testers, and I painted a racing stripe, and I loved it, and that's where I fell in love with modeling. Just at that moment, I was totally hooked at it. And so over the next years, I would build models, and there'd be all sorts of things. I built a lot of ships right off the bat. Wasn't very good. They didn't look good. Then I got into the 1/32 scale aircraft, and I built a lot of those. And those were easy to, I'm a kid. I'm like 10, 12 years old, or even less. And, I could display those hanging up and stuff. And that was pretty cool. And I had a real interest, and I still do, interest in history. So it was always about finding a reference, even back then, even though that's not exactly what I knew what I was doing. But I had a stack of history books and things, and I'd go through and I'd find a picture of a Kate or a Zero or a Corsair or whatever it might be. And so I would know what colors, and I'd look for those unique camouflages. And of course, I was just brush painting at that point, and they'd look like crap, but I was happy as hell. And I remember doing so then just back to the hobby side of things. There was a hobby store that came into Cottage Grove, and I was probably about 13 maybe, and they were going to have a contest. And so went in and I bought a Phantom. It was like a 1/72 scale, I guess, probably was Phantom. And back to looking at camouflages and stuff. Of course, the Phantoms have the soft edge airbrush camouflage patterns on them. So that prompted me buying my first airbrush. So I saved up my money, went up to Eugene Toy and Hobby, bought a compressor and a Badger 150. And that was my airbrush that I used for the next 20, 25 years until my compressor went out, and ended up getting a new one. But ended up doing that contest. But most of it was solo. It really was solo. It's just, there was nobody around me that was building models. My friends didn't build models. It was just something that I enjoyed doing and kept with it. Probably one cool thing that happened in that point in time is, again, I was super into history, and I started getting into armor. And then I decided to build what was way too extravagant of a diorama on Stalingrad. It was probably like 2 feet by 3 feet. Had the street scene and buildings, and the Germans in the buildings, and the Russians across the street attacking, and 30 figures, the whole thing. And my dad at the time was very much into photography. And this is all 35 millimeter stuff. And when I got done, he spent a couple of evenings with me and took all these really cool photographs, ground level photographs and stuff. And he had a dark room. And so we developed the photographs and things. And then it was Military Modeler magazine or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of it, but I used to subscribe to that. And I thought, and they had a thing in the back where you would, become a contributor, send us your submissions. And so I thought, I'm going to do that. So I sent my little roll of negatives and my typed up sheet and sent it off to these guys. And sure enough, 6, 8 months later, whatever it was, there's my diorama in this magazine. So that was actually my first one. So I was like about 14 or 15 years old. The cool thing about that is I don't know how this guy found out about it or not, but my mom and dad got a phone call one evening, and it was this fellow that lived down, I want to say around Drain area. It was a little south of Cottage Grove there.
Yeah.
And he said, I guess he explained to my mom and dad what he did and what he was, but he invited us to come down to see his workshop because he had seen my magazine article and thought I might find it enjoyable. So one Saturday we go down to his workshop, go into his garage, and it's all decked out. It is his workshop. And on the walls are all these movie shots and movie stills and props and this and that. turns out this guy was a prop maker for the movie industry, and all these movies that I, Battle the Bulge and things like that were all sitting there on his shelf. And so I'm going like, oh my gosh, this is like dream come true sort of deal. You do this for a living sort of thing, so that was pretty cool. It's cool that he took the time to, say, keep it up. There's things you can do with this, or, you don't have to do anything with it, but this is what I'm doing with it. And then, for me, it was like, wow, this is just like a whole world is opening up out there. Little did I realize that, 40, 50 years later, I would have done exactly what he did in the prop part before, like I was just talking about earlier on, and be part of this industry right now too, in a professional manner. So it was just kind of weird the way it worked out. No intentional. But in
Have you
terms of
talked to that guy since?
I have no idea even who he was. I cannot remember his name. I don't know.
Huh. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say this, but like there's actually a lot of movie stuff in Cottage Grove. A lot of people don't know that. But like Animal House was filmed here.
Well, I'll tell you a story about animals.
Movies.
Let me tell you my Animal House story.
Oh no. This could be good or bad.
Well, it's funny. So as you said, Animal House, the parade scene was all filmed down Main Street, Cottage Grove there. And so when they got ready to do pre-production and stuff, I was in the high school band at that time. And they had and if you're in the stage band, which was the jazz band, you also had to be in the marching band, supposedly. I never took it seriously. No one really did. But anyway, they tapped us. They said, listen, we want to have your band in this parade scene. So went great. And so we went out, on the football field and practiced marching up and down, playing our instruments and stuff to get ready for this movie. A month later, whatever comes by, and the producers came out to watch us and make sure we had our cues figured out and everything else like that. And they said, I'm sorry, you guys just don't have this. And so they ended up having Churchill come down and do the marching band scene from Eugene. So anyway, on the day of the filming, though, we all skipped school, go down there and watch them do the filming and stuff. And so in all the crowd scenes where they're running away from the cars crashing and the people swinging across the street, most of those high school kids are me and my friends running around.
Yeah, no, but like I was saying, there's a lot of like movie stuff in Cottage Grove. Like one of the costume designers lives in Cottage Grove. She has a shop downtown. Yeah. It's crazy once you kind of start hearing about some of the history that happens in this town. Like just recently, there's the Buster Keaton mural on the building. They're actually redoing that.
Yeah,
so it looks up to date.
Yeah, they've kept that up there. God, I think since I was a kid down there, it's been refreshed.
Yeah. No, it's really awesome how Cottage Grove preserves all that.
Yeah.
And Eugene Toy and Hobby is still in Eugene. They don't have the same modeling selection they probably do as when you were a kid, but it's definitely getting a lot smaller. But I haven't been there in a couple months, so maybe it's starting to grow again. But it's crazy.
Yeah, when I was younger, going up there, it was heavy. It was heavy it had a lot of plastic kits. It was super heavy in railroad. All along the walls were railroad, and they did a lot of RC airplane stuff.
See, I think that's the only reason Eugene Toy and Hobby is still around is because of the railroad community that's down here. Railroad is huge down here because I don't think they'd be able to survive without the railroad stuff they have.
Yeah.
Because that stuff, I mean, it's constantly moving. You can't go in there the same week and see the same products.
Yeah,
like,
there's
stuff moves.
Yeah, there's up here in Portland, there's like I mentioned Tammy's, and they have a huge wall dedicated to railroad. And I've talked to them, and their two money makers are RC and railroads. Yeah. And then there's a little shop not too far from where I live, and he's only railroad. And his footprint is, I don't know, 1,200 square feet or something like that. next to a Baskin Robbins. So it's just tucked away, but he's been there for 10, 15 years. So, that shows the dedication and consistency of the railroad guys in supporting their hobby shops.
No, I mean it's really cool once you kind of start seeing the modeling aspect in our state. I mean, I wish it was like, and that's kind of going to lead into my next question. How do you think the hobby is perceived here in Oregon? Because it's good and bad. It seems like it's been better lately, but it's not really all that.
That's hard because I'm sitting here in the middle of it, but by myself, just like everybody else. So it's hard to get perspective on like how other people might take a look at us from the outside looking in. I know that. So here in Portland, years ago, there was this, our model club, and I was a part of that, was very, very active. And we would put on the shows at McMinnville, and I was a big part of that. And we had the big rivalries with Seattle and their show and their modelers. And, it was all fun and games, but that seemed to be probably, I think, the high point. And maybe that was 8 years ago, perhaps, maybe a little bit more. And maybe it's just my own life because I drifted away from the hobby store as I got, or the model club, as I got busier doing this.
Yeah.
I had less time, or I guess, I don't know if interest is the right word for it, but it's like, okay, I could go to a meeting, but I have this deadline, or I just finished this deadline and I'd really like to take the night off, sort of thing. And so I kind of stepped away from the community in that regard. So it's hard for me to tell what's going on right now. I know that COVID took a big hit, because there's been no model meetings for the last, year and a half. So that's kind of separated the community. But at the same time, there's Facebook pages, like the Oregon Modeler Society has a Facebook page and it stays active and people are posting to that all the time. So they're still sharing and they're still communicating, just in a different format.
No, I mean, to me, it seems like before COVID, it was, hey, you're playing with toys. You know what I mean? And after COVID, it seems like it's back to kind of being a hobby again. It seems like it's gotten better lately.
I think that's probably, you can almost take that as generalization overall. I think because during COVID, people had to find other expressions, other ways to, do their time. Hobbies became more important. They were, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You took it more seriously. You had more time to do it. You got better at it just out of necessity. You just had the time to do it. So you got better at it. And as you start growing up that ladder, you become more aware of other people, I think it just puts what used to be a waste of time, for lack of a better, to, like I said, a hobby status, which is a lot more prioritized status than just doing something you could take pride in.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on that. I get that. So what is if you weren't doing tanks and cars and that kind of stuff, what else would you do, or would you be doing the railroad stuff?
If I did, the part about, well, I had my share of layouts or abandoned layouts when I was a kid because I was into cars, HO and N scale. And I never had a layout that really came together. I just would lose interest. Suffered from the thing that most people suffer from, is that I'd make it too big. It's like, oh, here's my 4x8 sheet of plywood and let's put a layout on it. And that's just too, especially when you're 12 years old, that's just too much to handle. You don't have the patience to do everything. So, you should have been something smaller. If the part of railroad that I really like is the scenery part, the buildings and, some of those kits that come out. And so I love looking at those. And one of these days I'll probably purchase one of those, buildings, old time buildings and docks or whatever they build, and put something like that together. I think those look pretty fun and pretty cool. Just as a little standalone diorama on a base, maybe a piece of track in front of it.
Yeah. I know down here they have that railroad community that like travels around to some of the smaller towns, and it hits Cottage Grove every so often, but they have that trains. They probably get like 6 or 7 setups in the armory.
Oh,
And just some of the stuff you see there is really, really spectacular.
yeah. Now those guys are not so good. And speaking of spending time on your hobby, a lot of those guys definitely do.
No, I mean, and it's all really, really like top-notch stuff. It's not just they threw it together either.
And what always surprises me about those traveling exhibits, like you're talking about, is all that stuff breaks down and travels and stays, and it doesn't break. It's like I can't walk across the room with a model without breaking it. And they're putting it in cars and trucks and taking it around. And it's like, God bless you guys.
Yeah, they definitely have pride in what they're doing. It's like I said, it's just not thrown together.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I didn't really have any other questions. Did you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I was kind of, we've gotten to know each other just casually over the last, what's it been, like 4-6 weeks, something like that, online?
I've been watching Mike Rinaldi since April, May, something like that.
Yeah, I think you and I connected about 4-6 weeks ago, something like that. It was sort of have a conversation about the ducks and the beavers and Cottage Grove and Eugene, and but I'm curious because I was talking to my family. I'm going like, I'm going to tell you a weird story. I'm going to be have this chat with you today, and to tell them kind of how it got started. And I says, well, here's the weird thing. He's in Cottage Grove. My wife's from Cottage Grove too, so it's and so it's like, what a small world that is. But I guess I'm wondering what prompts you to host these chats and promote the modeling community and things like that. Seems like that's something you're involved in.
So February, so December, the podcast ended, and I was on a podcast with Mark and Gordon, and we ended it after like 2 years. Well, I didn't see that coming. So Black Friday last year, I paid for this StreamYard, and I got the $10 a month deal. It's their Black Friday deal. You get it all year long for $10 a month, and you get all kinds of little add-ons. And well, they told me in December, January, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with it. I was paying $10 a month and not using it is basically what it came down to. And I've been always kind of wanting to get my YouTube channel to a higher status or more people watching it, however you want to say it. So I picked someone that I thought would be really cool to start out with, and it was Dirk Pitt. And we kind of had the conversation like me and you were having, and it kind of just started from there. And then I got 2 or 3 people lined up, and this has been going on since February.
And you're doing about one a month or more?
No, this is every week.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't realize.
I take a week off here and there, like 4th of July weekend, Labor Day or Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend. Just to kind of, it's family time. I try to, this is the only hobby time I get on Saturday is this hour and a half for whatever we're going to do today. And then the rest of the time I'm spending with family.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's kind of how this all started, how it ramped up. Like my YouTube channel, I've been doing it for like 6 years or so. And I usually average about under 10 views a video. And now it's probably somewhere around 30.
That's great.
At least that's what it looked like last time I checked. It's been a while, but it's slowly been getting better.
So I can't see on the screen how many people are watching us now. Can you tell?
Well, right now it says 1, but it's been up to like 5 or 6. And the cool thing is I will share this across Facebook too.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's all said and done, it might hit 100 views, but
That'd be
it just
fun.
depends on, I figure like I do share this on a bunch of the Oregon, like the Mid Valley group, Oregon Modeling Society, the Portland Scale Modeler. So it's going to hit a couple of the Oregon pages, and you know, so I'm sure a bunch of people are going to watch it from that side. But you
Yeah.
know,
Well, if you get an easy link, please send it to me and I'll post it on my page and see get more people watching as well.
oh yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
I can do that after this.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know what it is about YouTube, but like you set up the preview, like this is going to be on the show on Saturday, and you click the reminder at the bottom and it'll tell you when it goes live.
Yeah.
Well, I can't see that on the YouTube studio, or when I go to look at my upcoming video, it won't let me see that.
Yeah. You have to go in incognito.
It's like,
Yeah. I've learned that the hard way too, because I was doing things and I couldn't see the changes, like you said, through studio, what is
yeah.
outward facing. I can only see what's inward facing on certain things. And so I've learned just to go into Google, incognito, YouTube, search myself, and then I could see what other people are seeing.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, if you set that up right with all the hashtags, it'll hit a bunch of the different people from like Wednesday to Saturday. And there's sometimes I get 10 people watching live.
Yeah.
And it is, interesting at the end of the day, but it's a lot of work too.
Yeah.
Especially trying to do this every week. But with the pandemic, you kind of have time every week to do it too.
That's been kind of the undercurrent of our conversation through all the ifs, ands, and buts around here. It's like, oh, we have a little more time than we used to, or we use it differently anyway. I think that's going to be one of the things too. That's kind of back to that hobby thing is, we've learned how to do things differently. Whether that be just anybody who's still working, like working from inside the house, from the home now instead of going into the office, that kind of stuff. And all of that allows, somebody to have those 10 minutes here and there to glue a couple things together and, before they do their Zoom call or whatever. And so, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the hobby. It's going to be fine. And the other side of that is you and I were at the older side of modelers, the hobbyists and stuff like that. And we don't really pay attention. At least I don't. I'm aware of it. But there's that whole younger generation that are into things that are totally different than us, like the Gundams and things like that. And that part of the industry is absolutely bonkers.
So where I think the hobby has changed for the younger people, and it not so much during COVID, right? But tabletop gaming.
Yeah, that was the other one I was going to mention.
It is. And I think it's because it's got an interactive side to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not just you inside of your garage or, hobby room or whatever. I mean, you actually have to go out and interact with people or have the games.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a social aspect to it. And then what's great about it is that it allows the individual, the players, to decide how far they want to take, if you want to call it a hobby. So in the essence, it's a game. And you could just get your pieces, put them on the board and start doing your thing. But it allows you introduction into the hobby of, say, figure painting and diorama making and tabletop building and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's where you see these guys online who are doing these absolutely fantastic minis and figures and things like that. And they're all coming from that gaming side of the world. And I spend as much time with those guys on in the background while I'm doing my work than anything else. Just listening to some guy paint some, blue devil guy that's from the 24th century.
Oh yeah, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's changed, which I think kids are getting into, is 3D printing.
Yeah.
That to me is going to be the biggest influence in our hobby that we're going to have.
Yeah, so I've said that for years, and I worked in the 3D print industry. Like I said, I did scanning and 3D printing and all that stuff. That was part of what we did. And I said it years ago that at some point, a 3D printer on our tables are going to be as common as the airbrush. It hasn't been until really the last year that the resolution and the quality of the prints and the price of those printers have gotten to that critical point now where that's possible. You know, before that time, you could buy a very high resolution printer, but it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Or you bought something that was within your budget and it was full of build lines and it was just not worth even your time and effort. And prints are super hard to clean up just because of the material. Well, we're at that point now with all these Form Labs and all these other types of printers that are resin-based printers and the quality is absolutely fantastic. You cannot tell the difference from a cast resin piece and a printed resin piece anymore. So yeah, you're right. It's here.
You know, like, and I, I mean, I don't know when it's going to be, but I think even the modeling side of it, you're going to have a 3D printer at some point because these modeling manufacturers are going to start having like digital sculptors and you're going to just print out the files and create the model from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're within 10 years of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Shapeways was kind of the introduction into that, which was that whole thing where people all of a sudden could find something, a file and print it out themselves. Think about it this way. Everybody right now is concerned about the transportation issues, the logistics issues, and all the ships offshore. And, even like Mike is talking about how he can't get his books shipped because of all the cargo freight restrictions. 10 years from now, like you're talking about, you're going online, you're popping down your file, you pay your $25 for your file. Instantaneously, you're building your model. All those ships go away, all the containers go away, all the warehousing goes away, everything goes away, and you're just building models.
And then you're getting stuff that you really want to see.
Yeah. And it opens up this entire other side of the industry, which you see a lot of people working on too, which is creating the content. So you've got people right now who are building, doing CAD work for their own builds or small cottage industries. Well, that's just going to explode like crazy because, once somebody's doing that, you've got a Panzer IV 1943 screen, then you're going to do the 1944 screen and then the 1945 screen. And this is going to be a huge, like I said, a cottage industry, but it's going to be a huge, large industry. You're totally right on this.
I don't think it'll be anytime soon, but I want to say within 10 years, that's going to be a reality.
Yeah.
Because 3D printing is just getting so much better.
Yeah, it's there.
Did you have any other questions for me?
Boy, I don't know. I don't think so. I've enjoyed our chat, that's for sure.
No, yeah, I usually try to keep these, hour and a half. I do not. There's a couple times I've gone over an hour and a half, and those are great episodes. But like, it's really, really hard to keep someone's attention for more than an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
no, I totally get that. I know my attention span isn't what it used to be.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure most people just tune this on while they're at their bench and they're listening, right? But
yeah.
And which is great.
Yeah.
It's awesome. But, I try not to make it, like 2 hours long every time,
Yeah. So how much post-processing do you have to do after this is done in order to get it posted?
So basically what happens is we end the broadcast.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, it's live to live to live, right?
Wow.
And I do a lot of like the videos now on YouTube. I'm just straight doing them live because this process is just. But if I'm doing like the Warlord Titan that I've been building for like the last year and a half, like if I do an update video on that, that'll actually be on my phone and that'll come out because I'm actually trying to do a good job with that.
Yeah.
And
of course, it was a huge learning curve, but I've been surprised how much work it takes to produce a video, So I've been trying to.
It's crazy because iMovie and YouTube don't want to like coexist. Like you have to download it to your desktop and then take YouTube and then pull it from your desk. It's like, oh my God, why can't you two just communicate?
I've been using DaVinci Resolve. Have you heard of that?
You know what? You're like the fourth or fifth person I've heard say that.
Check it out. There's two versions. There's one you could pay for, but there's a free one, which is, I don't know what you would get in the free, the purchase one that's not in the free one. I know there's more. So the Resolve people all came from Hollywood. They were actually color correction people on video and stuff like that. That's where it all started.
Oh, okay.
And then they've since then put this package together, and it's all in one. And my first couple of videos were using iMovie, and it wasn't very long before I started bumping up against the limitations of iMovie. I'm just like, I want to do this, and there's just no feature that allowed me to do that.
Yeah.
So I started looking, and I already had Adobe for, Photoshop and Lightroom and all this other stuff. And I thought, well, okay, I'll just get Premiere and do my editing on Premiere. And I started poking around, looking at tutorials on Premiere and stuff, just to kind of see what it looked like. And DaVinci Resolve would start coming up as well. So I started looking at that, and it's like, okay, well, it looked, apples to apples in terms of what the capabilities between Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve was. But, I could pay $20 a month for Premiere Pro, add it onto my Adobe account, or I could download this free version of DaVinci and see what it looks like. So I did that. And that's to start off with, it's an overwhelming program. There is so much into it. But there's some great tutorials on YouTube that will take you step by step and give you introductions and stuff. And I would stay up all night watching those and trying to figure out how to run this program. And, so now what am I, about 12, 15 videos into this? I've finally got it down to where I know what I'm doing, where I got the keystrokes down and things like that. So it's a much quicker process. But even now, so like my schedule right now is what I try to do. I release a video every Tuesday morning. That's kind of my day. I've decided that was going to be it. But my work week is generally, for sure, Monday through Thursday, I'm building models. That's what I do, or taking care of AK stuff, but generally it's bench work kind of stuff, just filming, taking photographs, whatever the case may be. Start on Friday, yesterday. That's when I start editing the videos. So don't do any bench work. Just start downloading the videos, get them sorted out, start cutting them up. And like last night, I did a little bit of the voiceover. And this morning, before I started talking to you, started doing a little bit of voiceover. And then I'm going to be doing family stuff later this afternoon. But tomorrow I'll finish up the voiceover, and then I'll do the video editing. So the zoom shots and that kind of stuff, and add the tags and things like that, probably tomorrow evening. So that's, almost two full days, if not 3 days of working on the video to put out a 7-minute, 8-minute video, which is pretty labor intensive. Now that's better than it was about 10 videos ago when it would take me 5 days to do it. But, there's a lot of work in this. And then, like I said, you've got hours of video that you've got to compress down into those 7 minutes and make it tell a story. And that's something I'm still grappling with, and I'm better at all those. That's, you found this out. It's a learning curve on that too. You don't just let this thing run, because then you just have hours and hours and hours and hours that you have to wade through. So it's filming those key moments, and just turning it on, turning it off, and just getting separate video chunks and then trying to put those together. But
no, yeah. I mean, video editing is not for, it's not incredibly difficult, unfortunately, because everybody's doing it, right? But like it does take a minute.
Yeah, it's just not quick. It's not necessarily hard. It's just not quick. And that's again, back to the photography thing and everything else, I want to try to present a good product, so, I do try to pay attention to where the clips end and making sure it looks right. Like my hand is on moves actually off screen or something like that in a natural way, instead of just, jerky motions. And, all that takes a little bit of care, and it takes a few seconds. And then, I add a few sound effects. So then you're lining up the sound effects with the video and stuff like that. And, it's fun. I really enjoy it, but it just takes a little while.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, so far I've only been using iMovie because it's on my phone, it's on my iMac Mini, it's so it's convenient, but it's still all a process.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I started with that, and that was a good basis because that's where I learned kind of what the process is.
Yeah.
But then I just, like I said, ran up against some things that I wanted to try to do that wouldn't allow me to do. That's why I started looking around. But
yeah, like right now I'm trying to do I'm actually trying to do a logo for for just the Facebook page and the like the start YouTube start. I'd love to have like the border of this be my logo, but I got to sit down and actually make time to do it. And we only have so much time during the week, especially when you don't work from home still.
Yeah, that's true. You'll get there.
Yep.
Yep.
So if you didn't have any other questions for me, I'm gonna end this.
Okay.
But I will talk to you in a couple minutes.
Okay.
Nothing
Perfect.
else. Okay.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for coming on too. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. So that was Rick. Hopefully everybody learned something, and we tried to fill in the AK stuff at the beginning because I know there's a lot of products there, and I know the weathering pencils and the new paints came out, so I knew I wanted to cover those. Hopefully everybody liked this, and I will see you guys next week. I believe Gonzo from More of the Dice podcast is going to be on, but I'll have that up Wednesday or so for you guys to hit the reminder for. But I will see you guys next week. Bye.